Hi there everybody. If you're watching this video, most likely you got the link from our other channel, our Epic RV Adventure, to come here and do a little deep dive in using OpenWRT to connect multiple WAN interfaces as the way to go, easy and cheap at least, for mobile solutions, especially RV and marine community out there. So if you haven't already, take a look at the description below and you'll see the link to our overall review video on internet solutions that we're using as we're filming this, which is May of 2022. So right now we're going to take a deep dive into how we have 3 different cellular connections and Starlink all connected to one router, providing internet access throughout our entire coach and the surrounding area of our campsite. So first thing we're going to do is talk about how do we do that, and we're going to do that with a Raspberry Pi. So our total cost involved in doing this will be a Raspberry Pi. We're going to need a powered USB hub like this one and a Ethernet to USB adapter for Starlink like this one, plus the Starlink Ethernet adapter. So links to all that stuff's in the description below. And the other thing we're going to need is a router, and it could be any router that you may currently have, home router. I'd recommend one that supports Wi-Fi 6, and you can just look on the box or log into the firmware to see if it supports Wi-Fi 6 if you aren't sure, or just Google that model name online to see what it supports. If not, you can get a Wi-Fi 6 compatible router for $100 or less, Walmart, Amazon, Best Buy, etc. I'm using this TP-Link right here, as you can see. There's a link to that in the description below as well. So with all that done, how are we going to connect everything? Well, we're going USB 3 crazy here, and we're going to jump right in to the very key component, the core, the heartbeat of all of this Raspberry Pi 4. If you don't know what a Raspberry Pi is, it's a single board computer. It's very small. And I'll just take the lid off. There's your Raspberry Pi, and I got the 4 for a very specific reason. The 4 comes with 2 USB 3 ports, and the USB 3 ports are critical. It goes with 2 USB 2 ports and 1 gig Ethernet port. We're going to be running this in what's called headless mode, which means we don't have a keyboard, a mouse, or a monitor connected to this. We're just connecting to this as is. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to put an operating system on here, and we need to put OpenWRT. Now OpenWRT is an open source freeware router software, and it works for a lot of different devices. I chose Raspberry Pi simply because I like messing with the Raspberry Pi. You can find routers out there that support OpenWRT that are already Wi-Fi 6, and you can do that with by going to the openwrt.org website, and or just googling OpenWRT routers and see what comes up. I needed something that took multiple WAN inputs, wide area network inputs. So those are from the cellular carriers and Starlink in my case. And most home routers have 1 WAN port, and then they have 4 LAN ports, or local area network ports. So I needed something that had connectivity for all of these different WAN connections, and that's why I went with the Raspberry Pi as the cheapest and easiest to configure option. There's other ways to do this. I went this route because it was easy and it was cheap, and like I said, I like kind of messing with these Raspberry Pis. So the first thing we're going to do is we're got to go to the OpenWRT website, and we are going to go over here to downloads on the left. We have a couple of options here. We can look at stable release builds in the repository. We need to download it to your specific device. So we're going to use the firmware selector because it's a little bit quicker, and we're going to type Raspberry. You can see Raspberry Pi, and we have the 4B, and ours just happens to be 64-bit. So that's what we're going to get. And then it's got a few different options here. And what we want to use is use a factory image to install this router. So we're just going to click on it. It's going to download. It's about 14 megabytes, so it's not very big. And it's going to be an img.gz file. And if you're not able to open that, you can download a program called WinZip and open that. And that's what we're going to do right now. And we're going to open it. Now that we've got it open, there's only one file in that. So we're going to right click, go to unzip, find a spot for it. I'm just going to unzip it in the download. Now it's downloaded. Now we're going to do this easy, we're going to go to another website. Links to all these websites are in the description below as well. So we're going to go to the RaspberryPi.com website and we're going to download the software. I'm going to click on software. We're going to download the installer for Windows, because I have Windows. You can download it for Mac or Ubuntu or whatever you have. I've already got it installed, so once you do have it installed, you just open it up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose an operating system. And what we need to do for that is scroll down here and choose custom. And as you can see, the OpenWRT, there's the image file we have. Storage, well, here's where you're going to need a micro USB card, because that's your storage, that's your hard drive for a Raspberry Pi, and you're going to need a way for you to plug it into your computer. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and make sure that you don't care what's on that Raspberry Pi, because it's going to go bye-bye. So we're going to click on storage, we're going to click right, will give us a warning, and it's going to happen pretty quick. As you can see, we're done almost. There it is, we're done. That was quick. So we're going to take the SD card out of the computer, put it in our Raspberry Pi, and then we're going to boot this up. Now, one thing about OpenWRT is it comes pre-configured with the network address 192.168.1.1. So if your current network is using that same network, the 1.0 network, 192.168.1.0, you might have some issues. So turn off the devices that are using that network, especially if they're the device using the 192.168.1.1 address, because that address is what this is configured to, and you can't change it until you get logged into it. So how do you get logged into it if you don't have a monitor and a keyboard to be able to see it, to change it? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to hardwire this to a router, and the only other configuration change we have to make is we have to set an IP address manually on our computer that we're using to access it to. And my computer has Windows 11 on it, so I'm going to show you how to do that on Windows 11. If you have a different operating system, you're not sure how to do it, you can Google how to set a static IP address on your Wi-Fi interface, and you can come up with the answer. So what we're going to do here is we're going to jump in. This is the Wi-Fi network I'm connected to. Now keep in mind too, once I do this, I'm not going to have internet access. So I'm going to go here to IP assignment. I'm going to click edit. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to switch that to manual. We only care about IP version 4. So we're going to set an IP address of 192.168.1.2. And it can be any address between 2 and 254. That last one. Subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.0. The gateway, well, the gateway is going to be the address of this Raspberry Pi, which is 192.168.1.1. Windows 11 makes you put in a gateway. We're just going to go ahead and put in 192.168.1.1 and save it. So now we have that. So now we're going to plug this into the switch. So let's do that. Make sure you plug it into a LAN port on your switch. Now we're going to go and we're going to open a command prompt. So we're going to go search, type CMD, command prompt. We want to make sure we are actually seeing that device. So we're going to ping 192.168.1.1. And yep, it sees it. So now we need to connect to it to make some changes. Now the easy way to connect to that, well, is through the web browser. It's all we got to do. So we're going to type that same address into our web browser. .1.1. And the first time you log in, there's no password, and it'll say there's no password set. So first thing you want to do is go ahead and set a password. So we'll go down here to System Administration, Password. Put in anything you want for password, but make sure it's a good one, and then click Save. So before we can do anything with the OpenWRT, we need to connect to the internet. But of course, unfortunately right now we're not, because we don't have an internet connection set up on this. So we need to connect at least one source to this Raspberry Pi here so we can get internet access through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, and you can use anything you want, but I'm going to go here to the wireless, and I'm going to click Scan, and I'm going to connect it to one of our wireless networks that I know works. So it's found a lot of them, so I'm just going to click one of them. And then we're going to submit, and we're going to click Save. And it's showing disabled because we haven't applied the changes yet. You can see here it says changes are pending. There's unsaved changes up here at the top, so we're going to go down here and click Save and Apply. So theoretically we should be connected to the internet now through this Raspberry Pi. So let's see. Let's see if we can get into Google Maps. Hey, look at that, we got into Google Maps. So we know we're working. So now we're going to come back to System. We're going to go to Software. We're going to click under Actions. We're going to update the list. OpenWRT has a lot of cool features, a lot of nice functionality that can be added through these different packages. So what we're going to talk about today is the MWAN 3 package, which enables load balancing. We're going to talk about Ad Blocker, which is going to block ads, and we're also going to talk about another one that will give us a different look and feel for this one. So it's done all of its updates, done all its checks. We're going to click Dismissed, and then we're going to click Installed. You can see all the packages that are already installed, and that's just from the base installation. So we're going to look updates, see if we have any updates. We have quite a few updates already, so best thing to do the updates first before you do anything else. So we're just going to go hit the update, install. Now some of these updates may encompass some of the others, so when you're done it actually covers everything. So we get some warnings here, and once we get them all installed, it may kick us out to do a login, so we're going to go ahead and give that a shot. If you have trouble getting logged in and it keeps giving you an error page saying you don't have access, open an incognito tab and try it there. Now that we've got all that done, we'll go into Software again, look at updates. Yep, they're all gone, so we'll come back to Available. And now the first thing we want to do is we want to install MWAN 3, which is our load balancing software. So what we're going to do in Filter, we're just going to type MWAN 3. And there's a lot of options, so we're going to go ahead and select this hot plug script. We're going to install that. Some of these installs may take a while, download and install, etc., but it shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes. This is a big one. We didn't get any errors, so we'll dismiss, making us log in again. As you can see, MWAN 3 shows installed. So now we want to do the Lucy app MWAN 3. Now Lucy's the graphical user interface for OpenWRT. So this screen that you're looking at here, that's Lucy. So we're going to go ahead and click on the Lucy support, install. There we go, no problem there. Now a lot of different translations here. Find the one you want. I'm going to go with English. As you can see, that was a quick installation. And that's it. All these are just installations. So we've got MultiWAN 3 and WAN 3 connected. So how we set up load balancing? Let's take a look. First thing we need to do is make sure we have all of our interfaces set up. So we're going to click on Network, and we're going to go to Interfaces. And we're going to jump over here to Devices, and you're going to see this BR-LAN. This is the bridge device, which currently is the Ethernet port on the Raspberry Pi. So the first thing you see is this bridge LAN. That's your LAN device, and it's currently connected to Ethernet 0. And then you also have WLAN 02, which is our wireless network. These are the devices we have. Now don't get devices and interfaces mixed up. So another device to add. I don't have any options. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an option. So I'm going to plug in via USB here my T-Mobile hotspot from the Calyx Institute. And to use these USB devices, we also had to go back and install some drivers for that. So what I'm going to do is go to USB, filter under software, and honestly, you can install almost all these because it really depends on your specific application which one's going to work or not. You can just read over these and figure out which ones are going to be the best for you. So just keep jumping back and forth till you find one that works. So we did, and it shows up as ETH1. So we're going to click on that. Device is obviously network device. We want to enable or disable IP version 6 is really up to you. On that, that's all we've got to do. Just click add, and then we're going to save and apply. Then we're going to click over here on interfaces. We got to add this interface. And we're going to call this interface TM because it's T-Mobile, and it's going to be a DHCP client, and that's because it's going to get its IP address from the device, which is the hotspot. And for the most part, that's going to be what you select for any of these. And now we're going to select Ethernet adapter 1. We're going to create the interface. We'll make sure bring up on boot is checked, that way it always comes up. Now we had to make one other configuration change. We're going to go over here to advanced settings and down here to use metric gateway. To use the load balancing, you have to set a weight for every device or for every interface, and it has to be a different number for MWAN to work properly. So the lower the number, the more weight it applies. So you want your faster connections and more reliable connections to have a lower number than your slower and less reliable. So, and you always want to put them in like increments of 10 or 15. That way, if things change, you don't have to go change all the numbers. You can just add one in between or whatever. So we're going to call this one here 20. And we're going to go over here to firewall settings. We want, since this is a WAN or wide area network interface, we need to make sure that OpenWRT knows that. So we're going to select the firewall rule for WAN, and then we'll hit save, and then we'll hit save and apply. So now we have two different network connections, WANs, whatever you want to call them. We need to go in here to this first one, and we need to edit it real quick because we need to add a weight to it. This one's a slower connection than the T-Mobile, and we gave the T-Mobile a 20, so we're going to give this one here a 30 as its gateway metric. And I'm going to click save and apply. So now we have two interfaces. Now what we're getting ready to do works no matter how many interfaces you have, but to do load balancing you need to have at least two WAN interfaces because it has to balance with something, right? So now we're going to go over here to network and go down to load balancing. And before we get into this, I want to show you something real quick. You go to system, backup, flash firmware. You might want to do that every now and then, especially before you make any big changes, and back up your configuration. Now what it's not going to do is it's not going to save all of the different package options you've installed. So you're going to, if you need to do a complete reload, it's best to create an image. Let me click on this real quick and show you. And this backup here is to generate an archive of the current config files. So it doesn't back up the whole thing. So how do you make a copy of it? Well, you can just pull the SD card out and make a copy of it that way on your computer. Save it on your local hard drive, whatever. Use a backup or an imaging software like Mercurium Reflect. Link in that description below as well, because it is freeware. So let's just jump back into load balancing. You already see some things going on here. It says warning, interface WAN's not found, WAN 6, WAN B6, WAN. None of these are found. Now the reason why is because those interfaces don't exist. If we go back here, jump back real quick to our interfaces, the only interfaces we have is TM and WWAN. So we need to create a new interface, and we'll just call it, and it has to match the name, that you're going to name it here in interfaces has to match the name of the actual interface itself, or this won't work and you'll get one of these error messages like you see here at the top. So TM, and we're going to click on add. We want to enable it. Initial state, all online or offline, we want it online. Tracking host name or IP address. This is how the OpenWRT checks to see if this interface is working or not. And we're going to use that one and this one. These are public DNS or domain name service addresses, so you can ping them from anywhere. They're always on, and you can make sure they're good. And your tracking method is ping. All these rest here you can leave as default, and you click on save and apply, and we'll go back to overview. And if it works, you'll see, okay, it's not listed up here at the top here, and it also shows the metric. Now we didn't put the metric in here, it pulled that metric from the config we already had. So we need to go ahead and add our second configuration, which is WWAN. We want to enable that. Same thing as well. So we hit save and apply. Back to overview. Did not type that name in right. And here's the fun part, because it is case sensitive. So we know that's not right. Let's go back here and take a look, see what it is. Well, it shows it in all caps. Well, obviously it's not all caps. And unfortunately, you just can't go in and edit it to change it. It is what it is when you start it up. So we'll see if it's lowercase. And it saw it. So let's go ahead and delete that one. Save and apply the changes. So we've got our interfaces set up. Now we go to the next tab here, which is members. We need to set those up too. See, there, these are the profiles attaching a metric and a weight to an interface. And these are examples that are already here, obviously, and they have different metric and weights. We just want to select this first one here, and we'll change the interface to that one. We can create a new one, or we can just use the existing. It doesn't matter, it's up to you. The only problem with doing it that way is now you're not really sure what that one is. So to keep your names consistent, because this one here you can name anything. That's why I know this is my TM. A metric of 1 and a weight of 3 members. So I'm going to click on add, and like I said, metric of 1, weight of 3, save and apply. I know it's kind of tedious, but just hang in there. So then policies, there's different policies. There's using, and again, you create your own policies, but the policies they have here, they have a balanced one. One that uses one interface only, this WAN interface, another one that uses the B interface only, then one that is WAN first, WAN B second, you know, whatever. So these are, and we're just going to create a, let's call it test, doesn't matter what the name is here. Add, so we're going to talk about the members of this policy. We want to add our TM and our WWAN. Now the last resort is if it can't ping any of these devices, where does it go? And you can either drop it use default, which is the main routing table, on unreachable. We'll just go ahead and put it on unreachable. Now, one thing I found was not a lot of help out there on how to set up load balancing for OpenWRT, so I hope this helps you. So now we have that set up as a policy, but it doesn't mean anything right now. It's just got those specific members in it. But if you look here, this first one, just look at this first one, the only members in it are the members of the WAN. And if you look here, this WAN first, then WAN B second, see the members, the metric is 1 for WAN, so it'll use it first, but then it's 2 for WAN B. So we just created another one here. So you can create as many of these as you need. Then we'll go over to rules. So these rules, read through here, see what the rules mean. So we want to assign the balance policy, which means they're going to use them balanced. And you just play around with the settings however you need to for your specific configuration. So for HTTPS, we do want it balanced. When we can change all 3 of these to make it balanced, or I can just come back here to this balance policy, and I want this balance policy to have my TM and that one in it as well. And these other ones you can take them out or leave them, it doesn't matter. So now they're all in. We're going to apply that configuration. Back to overview. So you need to get rid of all those other unused members by clicking the X, then hit save and apply. We'll go back to overview, then we'll come up here to status, load balancing, and there they are. We see our 2 interfaces in the green, which is good. Now these other interfaces here, those were set up on the load balancing tab, but they weren't assigned to a device or anything, so we just left them there. You can leave them there or you can delete them later, it's up to you. So let's check out some details here. Again, these first 4 that say offline and tracking is down, no kidding, they don't exist. We just haven't deleted them yet. So we have our current policy is balanced. WLAN is at 40%, TM is at 60. We gave TM a more weight, so that's why it's getting 60% instead of the 100. So we are now load balancing through both of these. And there's some diagnostics and some troubleshooting information if you need it. So that's setting up load balancing. Pretty simple, right? There's more to it than that. If you need to do VLANs, things like that, link in the description below to the MWAN user manual on the OpenWRT website. So now let's jump over and let's install some ad blocking software. So we're going to go back to software, and whenever you see this list empty, that means you need to update the list. So we're going to go ahead and update the list. If you have any questions about how any of this stuff is working or how to do it yourself, leave me in the comments. I'll do my best to help you, but you're probably better off going to ask the question in Google. That's how I figured out pretty much all of this. Since we're here, just make sure we don't have any updates. Go to availability. We're going to go to ad block, and there's a bunch of different ad block stuff, but as you can see, a lot of it is translations again. And there's one called simple ad block, and you can just install simple ad block or ad block. We're going to go ahead and install ad block. So first thing we need to do, obviously, is install the one that says ad block. And that installed, no errors. Okay. Next, we want the Lucy app for ad block, and we'll install that. Okay. Now, here's the Lucy app for simple ad block. We're not using the simple one, so we're not going to use it. Now we need to look for our English translation. Install that. Look to see if there's anything else here we might need. These are all translations except for that. Now we need to see where that is, and sometimes you need to do a refresh. Oh, look at that, we got a services tab now, and there's ad blocks. We're going to click on ad block, and it's enabled. Startup trigger unspecified. The list of available network interfaces to trigger the ad block to start. You choose unspecified to use a classic startup timeout instead of a network trigger. So we'll just leave it there. DNS reports. Yeah, we'd probably like to see some reports, but it's going to need the TCP dump mini package installed. So let's copy that. Before we do anything, let's jump right back over to software and install that package. There it is. Got it installed. So now we'll go back over here to AdBlock. We'll click on that. If you want email notifications, you can select that as well. Additional settings. Most of these have the have a little bit of information there to tell you. Advanced report setups. Email setting, block list source. There's a lot of different block list sources out there, and you can choose them here as well. Be careful, the more you choose, the slower it's going to run. So we're just going to go ahead and click Save and Apply. Let's take a look, see if we have anything yet. Be surprised if we do. No. Log view. And it says right here, block list has installed successfully. Good. We can add to the whitelist. The whitelist is ads you want to be able to pass through, or websites that you want to pass through. That will be on the whitelist. The blacklist, if there's specific ones you want to add to block. And these will be in addition to any of the block list you select. And that's it for configuring that. Now, you may be happy with the look and feel of the Lucy interface as is, or you may want to change it. You can do that by selecting a theme. So we're going to jump back into our software, and we're just going to type in theme and see what comes up. We've got a few here. The default theme, installed already, who knew? And honestly, you just pick which one you want. Let's see what modern looks like. So now it's installed, and I hit refresh, and that's what modern looks like. Pretty nice. If you've ever installed a package and you don't want it anymore, you can go over here to installed and you can remove it. Updates, don't have any updates. Let's just walk through the menu real quick and see if there's anything else we need to talk about. So we've talked about interfaces and devices. We've talked about the wireless, DHCP and DNS. DHCP is the dynamic host. DHCP is the service that gives IP addresses to devices. Every device has to have an IP address. DNS is the service that actually translates IP addresses to host names. So instead of google.com, it's 8.8.8.8, for instance. You probably don't have to change anything here unless you want to or need to. Static routes, if you want to set up any static routes. Firewall settings. This does have a very robust firewall. You can add to it as well and make changes to your firewall here. You got diagnostics here where you can do ping, traceroute, NS lookups, and we're back to load balancing again. System, some things we didn't talk about was startup. These are the different services that are running. You can start, stop, or restart some of these. Your system settings, local time, how you want to sync with it, time zone, etc. This is important if you're doing a lot of looking at logs. That way you know the time on the log is what that actually means. So like right now the time zone is UTC, which is Greenwich Mean Time. I don't live in Greenwich, England, so that time is not right for me. It says it's 20:42 or 8:42 p.m. and I'm in the Eastern time zone right now. So I want to look for New York. and save and apply. And now my time is adjusted back down to 4:42, which is the current time. You can change my language here to English. Here's where I can change my my theme or outlook. I'm on this one right here now. I can change it to the Bootstrap, which is the original one, light or dark. So full of features, full of power. Let's go to our status, look overall. You can see how much memory we have available, how much we've used, our network. We got the two networks right now. And down here, my MWAN, my load balancing interfaces. Again, to clean this up, I can go into the load balancing section and get rid of these other four. Alright, so we got all that configured now. That's it, we're done. I mean, it may have seemed like a lot, but it really wasn't. There's a lot more you can do with OpenWRT, so I highly recommend doing some research on that. Let your fingers do the walking through Google and the OpenWRT website to find out the different packages you can install for whatever you may want to do. Now, the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is connecting to a different access point. Now, I don't recommend using the Wi-Fi that comes on the Raspberry Pi as the Wi-Fi access for your network. You can only use it for either the Wi-Fi access for your network or use it as a WAN interface, which in this particular case we're using it as our WAN interface for one of our connections, so we can't even use it to broadcast Wi-Fi to connect to. So what we need to do is we need to connect to something that will do that, and I'm using a TP-Link router, link in the description below with that as well, and I have it on hand, so kind of was no extra cost to me. Any router will do. The nice thing about this particular TP-Link router is I can also put it in access point mode, and what that means is it actually doesn't become a router anymore, it becomes an access point. So really all I'm using it for is the Wi-Fi antennas and the Ethernet ports on the back of it if I need hardwired stuff. So by putting it in access point mode, I don't have to worry about configuring everything on the TP-Link like I just did on the OpenWRT. You can leave it as a router, doesn't affect it that much. It's just you might see a little bit of a performance hit by having two routers connected back to back. What I've done is I take the Ethernet port on the Raspberry Pi and I connect it to the WAN port on my router, put the router in access point mode, and now all of a sudden the Raspberry Pi is doing all of the routing functions. It is the DHCP server, so it's assigning the IP addresses out to everybody on the local area network. And I'm using the powerful antennas and Wi-Fi version 6 that came with this particular TP-Link router. So I've got great Wi-Fi coverage, I got secure Wi-Fi coverage, and I'm not using a lot of the resources on that router. Now, if your Raspberry Pi seems to be taking too much of a hit from a performance perspective, then you can make the TP-Link your router and use it as your DHCP server and your and to do DNS and all that stuff like a router normally would, and that'll save some CPU cycles on your Raspberry Pi. Just depends on what you want to do. You may run into problems if you're running that too, not only because you're using if you're using it as a router, but each of those routers have a firewall on it. You may run into some problems where you're getting some conflicting stuff going on, and you may not be able to make certain connections because of that. So that's another reason why you don't want to use two routers connected back to back like that. So thanks guys so much for watching. I hope you were able to hang in here for this very long, very detailed version of how to set up OpenWRT's MWAN 3 load balancing package and the AdBlock package as well. So if you have any questions, leave us a note in the comments below. Please check out our main YouTube page, Our Epic RV Adventure, where we check out different cool stuff all over this great country of the United States of America, and help raise money for Christian-based veterans charities. So if you'd like to help us out in that endeavor as well, check the link in the description below for the different ways you can help us. All the money we make off of our social media platforms goes straight to a Christian-based veterans charity. And if you've got a Christian-based veteran charity in mind that could use some help, let us know in the comments below as well, and we'll reach out to them and see what we can do. Thanks for watching, and may your next journey be an epic adventure. Bye.